Okay, if someone would just, good evening, this is John Haller. If someone would just kind of give me a thumbs up indicator to let me know that you're um, seeing this, I would appreciate it. Let's see here. Okay, thumbs up, thanks. So let's get started. So, want this to be, I'm going to try to make this a little bit more interactive tonight than usual. So if you have questions, give me questions, and my moderators, if you would message those to me in Facebook Messenger, I'll be sure to see those. I'm going to talk just a little bit about what's going on in the Middle East and kind of the wide war. I'm going to try to share a map here just so we can get started. There's a lot going on, but I'll try to just give the highlights. I'll do more on Sunday with clips and um, graphics and pictures and everything, but I do have, um, let me see here. Hang on. Let me go back here. Okay. I think that works. So, going to talk about Middle East and what's going on. So, as you know, Israel. This, of course, is a big map of the Middle East. I don't know if this translates over. No, it doesn't. I have a thing on my mouse that allows me to highlight a certain area, but it doesn't really work when I'm in this kind of mode. So, Israel's at war in Gaza. So here is a map, close-up map of Gaza Strip. So this is where everything happened. Last numbers I see are 1,400 dead, but there are a bunch of people missing. A lot of rocket attacks continue. It's particularly in the areas what they call the Gaza envelope, in the area around the north and east sides of the Gaza Strip. The largest group of Israeli soldiers has massed up here in the north and have started to come in. They've made it close to within a couple kilometers, I hear, of Gaza City. Israel's not releasing a lot of information about what's going on. Thus far, I'm only aware of one Israeli IDF soldier who's been killed, but that could be more. And it could be, I think even the optimistic people think that if they go in really deep into the Gaza Strip, there could be 2,000, 5,000, 7,000 dead Israeli soldiers. It's not an easy operation. There's a RT video, that's a Russia Today video. One of their reporters was allowed to go down into the tunnels and do some filming. And some of these tunnels are 250, 300 feet below ground. They have like giant shafts that they have to descend. So this is going to be very difficult, depending on how Israel decides to do this. I think Israel may try to employ some of the things that the United States did in Mosul and Fallujah, particularly in Mosul, because the United States had learned a lot about that, about how to go into these close-in urban, densely populated centers. So right now, what it appears Israel's doing is they're dividing the north half of the Gaza Strip from the southern half. So there's a strip here. Now, this northern part here, probably home. The Gaza Strip itself, from north to south, is 35, 40 miles. Here at its widest point, it's about 7.5 miles wide. to about 3.5 miles wide up in most of the rest of the Gaza Strip. So Israel's concentrating in the north. This area in the north, Gaza City, home to about 1.2 million people. It's believed that at least 200,000 or 300,000 civilians remain in that area, and up to 40,000 Hamas soldiers and fighters, although some of those might be distributed. And there are about 300 to 350 miles of tunnels that have been built underneath the Gaza Strip. So I'll give you an example of that. When I was there in December, we went to Niram, which is, I think, it's down here in the south in this area. And I believe it's the closest kibbutz to the Gaza Strip. And now I'm not seeing it. I'm pretty sure this is it right here. So we had a presentation there, and we walked out to the border area of the fence around the kibbutz, and there's agricultural, these are fields, agricultural fields between Niram and the border. We were about 1 kilometer from the border, but they told us that a number of years ago, 10 years ago or so, a tunnel, a tractor was plowing in the field just outside the fence of the kibbutz, the security fence of the kibbutz, and the tractor fell into the tunnel. And they found out that this is where the terrorists were going to come in. They also showed us a place on the property where, in a rocket attack, it struck a group of a few men. 2 were killed, and 1 lost his legs. He became the mayor of Eshkon district, which is over in this area here. And he spoke to us that night. He, as I said, lost both of his legs in that attack about 10 years ago. So Israel's concentrating its process in the north. To give you an example, though, of how Hamas handles this, as Israel was coming in and advancing towards Gaza City, Hamas forced 100 women and children to go towards the Israeli soldiers as they were advancing. This is how these guys fight war. They're incredibly evil people. And to be honest with you, I don't know what the plan is for Gaza when they get done with what they're going to do. I don't think they have any choice. There are some indications now, at least I think the U.S. government is trying to put pressure on Egypt and Israel to allow civilians to exit the Gaza Strip through the Rafah crossing down here in the south, right here. And by the way, the Egyptian border is much more fortified than the Israeli border. And until the time of the Yom Kippur War in 1973, the Gaza Strip was under the control of Egypt. And it's pretty clear, Egypt does not want these people. They're Muslim Brotherhood. Hamas is an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood. If you remember, in the prior government, al-Sisi's government, Mubarak's government fell and was taken over by Morsi, a guy from the Muslim Brotherhood, and they ruled Egypt for close to a year till they were forced out by al-Sisi, who continues to be the ruler. So the Muslim Brotherhood is a terror organization. It's very active in the United States through a number of different things. There's a Muslim Justice or Muslim Judges Association. There's CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations. All of these are just front groups for the Muslim Brotherhood terror organization, which was founded, I believe, in 1927 or 28 in Egypt. Egypt doesn't want Hamas to come in because they have a problem with Muslim Brotherhood. There were elections in about 2005, 2003, 2005 in Gaza, and Hamas won. They went against the Palestinian Authority group, and they won. And then there was a civil war that they had, and I believe over 8,000 died in that civil war. And I would challenge anyone to go find me pictures of the protest about the 8,000 people that died in the internecine Palestinian civil war in Gaza back in the 2000s. Israel had settlements within Gaza. Actually, know some people who lived there, and under pressure from the Bush administration, Ariel Sharon, then the prime minister, forced these Jewish settlers in Gaza to leave. And I mean physically force them. I think there were around 8 or 10,000. It was a terrible thing. And by the way, within 48 hours of the United States essentially forcing that, we had that massive hurricane in the United States called Katrina that hit New Orleans and the Gulf Coast of the United States, and caused massive damage. One of the most significant property damage events that we've ever had, and destroyed large portions of New Orleans and other places. And I do think they're connected. So Israel continues to make strikes and that sort of thing. Now, I want to zoom out the map here because there's some other things going on. The first thing is that Yemen, okay, so here is Saudi Arabia. I don't know if my cursor is showing up. I have like 3 things I have to look at. So this area, of course, you know where Saudi Arabia is. And then the southern tip of the Arabian Peninsula is Yemen. And Yemen's not a insignificant player in all of this. The population of Saudi Arabia, as of most recent reports, is about 37.5 million people. Of course, they have a lot of oil. They have the wealthiest family on the planet in the Saud royal family. But Yemen has over 35 million people, and they've been in a civil war. This is a war that was supported. The non-government, the people trying to overthrow the government, was supported by the Saudi royal family, and that thing's been a mess since at least 2018. If you remember, there was a rather large drone and missile strike on the largest oil refinery in the world. It's up here towards this region, caused massive damage, was taken offline for a while. And the missiles for that came from both Iran here on the other side of the Persian Gulf and Yemen. Yemen has also launched missile and drone attacks on the United Arab Emirates. And the United Arab Emirates so here's Yemen. And then up here on this peninsula, you have Oman. And then the United Arab Emirates, Dubai, Abu Dhabi. There's 7 emirates that form the country of the United Arab Emirates. They're sheikdoms. And then also the next peninsula to the west in the Persian Gulf is, I'm going to say, Qatar. That's what everybody I've been listening to in the news has been saying. So you know what I am. It's spelled Qatar. And if you pronounce it a different way, blessings on you. I'm going to say Qatar just because that's what I've heard for years. And some people, and I don't speak Arabic. And when people come to the United States and don't speak United States English, I don't usually take time to correct them if I know what they're talking about. And if I don't know what they're talking about, I'll ask them. So you know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about Qatar, this country here. It's a huge sponsor of the Muslim Brotherhood. It's a very wealthy country. There are, I think, under 1 million Qatarites, so I don't know what you call them. And they each get a stipend from the government of about $2 million a year. Klaus Schwab was there last week meeting with the prime minister and the foreign minister to see how the World Economic Forum could work together. Qatar had the World Cup last year. There's tremendous allegations and findings of bribery by Qatar to do that. And Qatar's playing both sides. We have a major base in Qatar, but they also fund Hamas to a large degree. And everybody's funded Hamas. I mean, everybody thought that Hamas could be controlled, but that obviously, we now know that that was a pipe dream. And there's a lot of division in Israeli society about what happened and who's responsible. And I assume that that's eventually going to be done. But what Yemen has done is Yemen has been launching missiles and drones towards Israel. The United States has assets here in the Red Sea, destroyers with anti-missile technology and anti-missile batteries. They shot down a number of those missiles. I think one of the attacks had 14 drones and missiles. I don't know what the exact breakdown was. And those were all shot down. They were headed towards Israel. But interestingly enough, and this is kind of a significant fact, one of the missiles was shot down by a U.S.-made anti-missile battery, like an Iron Dome, that's located in Saudi Arabia. And I think that's kind of significant that a missile, with all the things that are going on in Gaza and the meltdown in the Muslim world against Israel, which is pretty significant, that Saudi Arabia shot down the missile. Now, I suspect that the missile defense system was set on automatic, so that I don't know that somebody got on the phone and said, "Hey, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, should we shoot down this missile or not?" I just don't think that is how it operated. There were other missiles. It was clear that they were shooting at a lot. A lot is in this area of the Gulf of Aqaba in the Red Sea, and they ended up hitting some Egyptian cities or towns or Egyptian areas here in the Sinai Peninsula. By the way, just so you know, this area here, if you go all the way from Eilat down to the southern end of the Red Sea, this is where Neom is being built, and it'll go roughly 100 miles inland. And what a lot of people think is the real Mount Sinai, I happen to agree with this, mountain called Jebel al-Lawz. This is where Neom will go in like this. And the mountain range that it crosses is where Jebel al-Lawz, which I believe is the real Mount Sinai, is located. But some people think this, where St. Catherine is here in the Sinai Peninsula, is where Mount Sinai is. And that's, again, it's a contested issue, but I think Patterns of Evidence and some other people have done tremendous work with finding things here. So significant area. And it's been open to a lot of Christian tourists over the past couple of years by the Crown Prince. But so the distance from Yemen to Israel is roughly 1,000 miles. Yemen has some Soviet-made MiG-29 fighter aircraft. I've heard there was a report that Israel had attacked some of the missile sites in Yemen, but I have not been able to confirm that. It was a report that I got from somebody today, but I just haven't been able to confirm it. But I wasn't at my computer all day checking these things. But the point is that the MiG-29s could be loaded with bombs and they could go to attack Israel. But the problem is it's roughly 1,000 miles. A MiG-29 does not have the range. It might get there, but it's not getting back unless you have a refueling capacity, and that's land someplace and refuel it. I just don't see that happening. Anybody giving them landing rights, and they don't have refueling tankers in Yemen. It's a similar problem that Israel has with attacking nuclear facilities within Iran. For example, this part of Iran, this is the ancient area of Elam, Bill Salas has written a lot about Elam and prophecies concerning Elam. Some think they're fulfilled, some think they're still to be fulfilled. And I sort of take an open mind to that, which I think that they might be, but it's always a kind of wait and see area. But the problem that Israel has is that this area that Israel has to traverse from its air bases to Iran is about 850, 900 miles. And F-35s, I don't think that the F-35s, even with external fuel tanks, have the ability to get to Tehran, do their mission, and get back. They would have to land and refuel. Right now, that's highly questionable that would be granted by anybody. There was hopes, I think, that might be granted by Saudi Arabia, and maybe it will be. I don't know. Everything is really up in the air right now. Israel does have a couple of air refuelers. They've also ordered some from the United States, but the air refueler construction is really backed up. We won't get new ones for another couple of years, and Israel has been told that they'll get theirs maybe in 2027 or 2028. So it's not going to be much help. So that's a logistical issue that Israel has with attacking with aircraft from Tehran. Israel does have some submarines with missile launching capabilities, and those, I believe, are in the Persian Gulf. Of course, Israel's not announcing where they are, and they're fairly difficult to track. Here's the holy city. That's Qum. That's the holy city, or it's where a lot of the Shia seminaries and that type of things are, although there are very significant Shia holy sites within Iraq. And if you remember, when the Pope went to Iraq, he went to where the leading Shia cleric is located, which is in Iraq. And I don't know if the guy's still alive. When the Pope went a couple of years ago, he was in his 90s. A lot of these guys are getting a bit long in the tooth. So there's been some diplomatic developments. I believe that Israel's ambassadors to countries have been sent home, and then the other countries have told their ambassadors to come back. I believe that includes Jordan. I'm not sure about Egypt. I'm not sure about Saudi Arabia, but I know that Bahrain is located here between Saudi Arabia and Oman. Bahrain is a Sunni royal family, but it's mostly a Shia population. So it's heavily contested. Qatar would be Sunni. Iran would be Shia. And even though Qatar is Sunni and Iran is Shia, there is a large gas field here in the Persian Gulf between Qatar and Iran. It's the largest gas field in the world. And let me make one statement here too. I do listen to other guys who do prophecy updates and that type of thing. And I think, and I really try to be accurate in what I say. And so and if I'm wrong, I try to correct it. But I continue to hear this, that the Eastern Mediterranean gas, so the South Pars, the gas field here between Qatar and Iran, is the largest gas field in the world. And the Iranians share it, and it's going to be pumping out gas for the world for a long time. But there's a lot of dispute about there's a lot of discussion about the Israeli gas fields, which are located in the Mediterranean. So here is Haifa Harbor. Here is the border between Israel and Lebanon, and the gas fields are located largely in this area. And remember, there was a dispute over the maritime border, and a U.S. guy named Amos Hochstein who worked in the Obama administration, who's also worked for a large liquefied natural gas company in Houston while Trump was in office. Now he's back. He came and negotiated, and when Lapid was the acting prime minister of Israel, they entered into an agreement with the Lebanese government to sort of define the border, which will result in billions of dollars going to Lebanon and Hezbollah. So a lot of rocket attacks from Gaza into Israel. Some are reaching Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. If you look at this map, like from the north part of Gaza to Tel Aviv is 45 miles, and from Gaza to Jerusalem is about 50 miles. And I have friends in Jerusalem, and there's been rockets hit around Jerusalem. When they fire these rockets, the system analyzes where's the rocket going to fall. They calculate the trajectory, speed, that sort of thing. And so sometimes they won't fire anything because it's going to land in an open field, or it's not going to cause much damage, because it costs about $80,000 for an Iron Dome missile. So you get a rocket that costs $6,000 to build, and then you spend $80,000 shooting it down. That's not, I mean, it saves everybody, but the cost benefit analysis is pretty difficult to justify. So that's why they analyze these things. The other thing that needs to be kept in mind, I think this is fairly significant as to what's developing, is that, and by the way, all of these communities down here around Gaza, these have all been evacuated. I believe even a large part of Sderot has been evacuated just because it's a war zone now, and they don't want people there. And they've been told, initially we're told that they're not going back until at least January. And these people have businesses and lives and that sort of thing. Now there's some indication, some people are being told it might be 3 years before you get back. This operation in Gaza is not going to be a few weeks or a few months. It's going to be a year or longer, I think, to get done. And then the question is, what do you do when it's done? General Amir Avivi, who heads up the Israeli Defense and Security Forum, and by the way, if you go to idsf.org.il, I think it is, you can sign up for, he's doing almost daily briefings now. I think they occur, excuse me, they occur about 11 a.m. Eastern, and they last about 30 minutes. They're free. Just register. If you want to contribute to the IDSF, they're helping to outfit soldiers. When Israel called up soldiers, they called up 300,000. They had reserves. They had what I've been told is 150% report rate. This is unheard of. People were coming back, even though they were older and on inactive reserves. So they had many more show up, but they didn't even have weapons for a lot of them. They didn't have protective Kevlar or ceramic vests to protect them for going into battle. So there's been a massive effort to supply all of these soldiers with protective armor, weapons, ammunition, that sort of thing. But they had a response that they didn't really anticipate, and they maybe didn't plan very well that it would happen. Now, there are two other things about Israel that need to be discussed that I think are rather important. First is the area, what's known, I call it Judea and Samaria, but what's also called the West Bank. So this would be biblical Samaria. Ramallah is located here. Shiloh is located here. Nablus is here. That's where ancient Shechem is. And then it goes all the way up to near Nazareth. Nazareth is in Israel. You can see Nazareth up here. So the west, it's very complicated how this is divided up, but the roads are flyover roads. It's very difficult to drive around unless you really know what you're doing. So this is Samaria. and this is biblical Judea. These two areas are called the West Bank. Israel maintains security control over a large portion of this, but then there are areas that are under the control of the Palestinian Authority. They haven't had elections. They had an election, as they say. Mahmoud Abbas is now in about the 18th year of his 4-year term that he was elected to in the early 2000s. They haven't had elections since. I also see, so anyway, my point on the gas fields is these fines are significant for Israel. There's a border town up here area called Rosh Hanikra, north of Nahariya. And we have friends that live here. And, they were telling us when we were there a few years back, if the missiles start going, we have a couple minutes to figure out what we're going to do. And there's no way we can escape even if they start sending troops over the border, very difficult for these people up here. But I hear people say that the Israeli gas fields are the largest gas fields on the planet. And this is just not accurate. They're significant. They're significant for Israel. I think there's enough gas there to supply Israel for 500 or 600 years. But I've run the numbers. I did a lot of videos, including the numbers and that sort of thing a number of years ago. They're not the largest in the world. They're significant for Israel. They'll supply Israel for a long time. They help Israel with fresh water because Israel uses the gas to power desalination plants, which are very energy intensive. And it's going to be a while, I think, given the turmoil, that even though some of these were given over, I think wrongly under international law, to the control of the Lebanese government, which is really controlled by Hezbollah, that it's going to be a while till those are developed. So the problem right now is that in Israel and within Israel, a lot of these areas that border on the West Bank are majority populated by Arabs. And a lot of Arabs are fine. They love Israel. Some serve in the armed forces and the IDF, but there's increasing tension. So since October 7th, and this is something that's not talked about that much, there have been about, this is in the West Bank area. In the West Bank, there have been about 100 Palestinians killed, which for a 1 month period is a pretty significant number of people being killed. It's not many periods match that. The concern within Israel, so there, of course, we have Gaza. The next concern, of course, is the West Bank, and there's tremendous unrest there. And I believe that I hear people saying that, well, the Palestinian Authority, Hamas just has a minority approval or support within the areas of the West Bank, Judea and Samaria. And I don't think that that's accurate. I think that Hamas, I think some of the surveys that have been done by the Israeli Defense and Security Forum, IDSF, that's General Amir Avivi's group, they have found that there's tremendous support for Hamas there. And there's also concern of the support for terrorism and Hamas-type terrorism within the Arab areas of Israel. And people have received warnings within Israel that I know that say that they need to be vigilant. I have had people in Israel tell me that they have seen Arabs, or what appear to be Arabs, out photographing and filming apartment and residential buildings within Jerusalem. There's a tremendous push to get guns in Israel. So this is, you have Gaza, you have the West Bank, which is really on a razor's edge, I think, of exploding. And you have the people, for example, there was a guy, Palestinian Hamas leader, interviewed. You can go to memory.org and you can see that interview. And he essentially said, look, we want to do 2, 3, 4, 5 October 7th. We want to continue to do that. We will continue to do that. It's a big problem. So there's a lot of tension there. So Gaza, West Bank, Arab areas of Israel and what's going to happen as this push into Gaza intensifies. And then the other area is the area of northern Israel. And having read the Institute for National Security Studies, INSS, and other intelligence assessments, I have about 30 or 40 organizations that do these white papers and PDFs all the time. I try to keep up on reading them. But there was an assessment done by INSS. In fact, if you go to their website, let me go here, get to another tab. Here's the Institute for National Security Studies. There it is. There we go. So they have a lot of assessments. They have a lot of great graphics. For example, they have this one. I sort of copied the video on Sunday. They have all these updates, what people have been evacuated in the north and in south. And there's at least 120,000 people that have been told to leave home. And they have this other great graphic on that you can, I'm not sure how to get rid of this layer. There we go. So you can kind of see what missiles launches have been in since October 7th or 8th up through the 18th. Kind of give you, this is an unprecedented amount of rocket attacks that have taken place. So again, inss.org.il is a good site. Again, there's the IDSF website is another good place where they have a lot of different studies. And then you can go to the left-wing ones too. There's Commanders for Israeli Security. I don't know if I have that one bookmarked just because I think they're a bunch of left-wing lunatics that don't really understand anything about anything. But you can see there's one called the International Crisis Group. There's Brookings. And everybody's writing about this. Then they write about all these different things. But the INSS website, even though it's a little bit, I don't know that I trust everything that they say, it does have a good sort of overall general assessment. They track the war. And if you go down here, I'm sure you can find their assessments that they do on an annual basis. Here you see this tab for strategic assessments. So if you want to learn about that, you can download those, the strategic assessments. So here's one published in July of 2023, and it goes through all the different things. And they've been talking about the war in the north for a long time. So this is not something that's going to go away quickly. There is a speech that is supposed to be given by Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah. He's not said anything publicly since the October 7th attacks. And this is unusual. Of course, Hezbollah is funded by Iran completely. Nasrallah he lives in a bunker. He hardly ever comes up above ground. But he's supposed to give a speech at 3 p.m. Lebanon time tomorrow. And everybody's making a big deal. Some people are making a big deal about it. There's some videos that he's put out of him signing papers and documents. And it's very symbolic of what he's talking about. But that speech is 3 o'clock Lebanon time tomorrow. So that, I believe that would be, I can't remember if it's 7 hours difference or 6 hours difference right now between Israel and the U.S. Let me just check here. Israel time, 1:40 a.m. So it's 7:40. So that would be 6 hours difference. So it's going to be about 9 a.m. in the morning, and it's going to be streamed live. I will try to put in the show notes after this is over, a link to where you can watch an English translation of the speech live. This is pretty unusual that they're doing this. So everybody thinks this is very significant, and it may portend that Hezbollah is going to enter the war. There's a lot of missiles and incursions and anti-tank rockets and firing back and forth. The last I heard that there have been about 50 Hezbollah fighters have been killed. Hezbollah did issue sort of a cryptic statement. I think Seth Fransman reported on this in the Jerusalem Post, that Hezbollah is sort of saying, we don't have an unlimited supply of martyrs for this thing. They seem to be reluctant to get in, but Iran may be pushing them. There's some indication that Hamas went way beyond what they were supposed to do. They just went crazy. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment, the atrocities that happened. But so the question is, maybe tomorrow we'll know whether Hezbollah is getting more involved in the war. Don't really know if that's going to happen or not. And again, I also think that one of the things we need to be careful about right now is everybody's running around saying, oh, this is Ezekiel 38, or this is Psalm 83, or this is, this or that. I think we'll know in hindsight that those prophecies have been fulfilled. Well, one, whether they were going to be fulfilled, and two, whether they have been fulfilled. But I think too much speculation is not helpful right now. It sort of diminishes the significance of the times that we live in anyway. That's just my opinion. So we can see the elements, we can read those prophecies, and we can try to see if they match up. But I'm not sure yet. I'm sort of taking a wait and see approach. And I think I'm doing it. So of course I think that's the wise thing to do because I'm doing it. But, so I just think some people, it's very easy to get a little bit too far out ahead of this. So Assad seems to be indicating that he doesn't really want to get involved in Syria. I mean, to give you some idea, here's a map. This blue area is the Golan Heights. It's blue, I guess, because this map, it's called liveuamap.com, and you can get maps from all these different conflict areas. So to give you some idea, I mean, so when you're in the Golan Heights in Israel, here's a town called Metula. It's the farthest north town in Israel. Well, in this part of Israel, it's the farthest north town. This is the area of Mount Hermon. They claim the reason this is blue is because they're Syrian oriented. And so they think this is a disputed territory that since Israel's been under Israeli control since 1967. So this is Metula. There's kind of a significant area here. There is, no, I have to find the city. It's called Gajar. I don't think this map has anyway, it's about 2 miles from Tel Dan. And Tel Dan is, a significant biblical site. Sort of Jeroboam had the golden calf, and Gajar is about 2 miles away from there. But Metula up here, these cities, Kiryat Shimona, which is about 25,000 people here, these have all been evacuated. And the people, I don't think they've been given any indication as to when they're going to get back, depending on how this goes. Now, the security assessments that I've read over the past couple of years are not very encouraging for the casualties that will be undertaken by Israel in a Lebanon war. There was a war in 2006. That was the second Lebanon war. Right now, they've killed 50 Hezbollah fighters, and that's about 20% of the number that were killed in the 37 days of the second Lebanon war in 2006. So that's kind of significant. They're not really technically at war, and 20% of the number killed in 2006 have already been killed. But I played a few years back, the Israeli Air Force, head of the Israeli Air Force, who at a Hezbollah security conference said, listen, when we go in, and we will go in sometime to Lebanon, we will do more in 24 to 72 hours than we did in 36 days in 2006. And it will be shock and awe like you've never seen. But even in those assessments, I've seen numbers of 2,000 to 6,000 dead soldiers, IDF soldiers or Air Force, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 18,000 civilians. Now, that may be diminished because they've evacuated the areas, but there's a lot of tunnels. And so whatever happened with Hamas on October 7th was what Hezbollah had planned. They had planned to invade Israel, get into a town like Metula, get hostages and take them back, and then use those to negotiate. So it's very tense. This is going to go on for a while. There's tremendous pressure on Israel to do ceasefires. I'd highly recommend that you follow the JNS, that's John, Nancy, Sam, jns.org. They have a YouTube channel. Caroline Glick posts her videos there. Highly recommend that you watch the things that she's putting up. She's putting up something about every other day, doing interviews, talking to people. There's also a Rumble channel with Michael Doran. I think I linked to it in the Sunday show notes of my Sunday update, and that's on Rumble. Israel at War might be the turning point. Gadi Taub and Michael Doran are running that, and they're doing a pretty good analysis of things, and they're putting up a video at least every other day of about 30 minutes to an hour. So if you want to stay up to date on them, I would highly recommend that. Those are good guys. And there's everybody in the world there's guys called the Israeli guys that are putting up some pretty good videos. So you just have to choose who you're going to watch. And then there's tremendous amount of information on Telegram. In fact, the Jerusalem Post had a rather large article. That wasn't the Jerusalem Post. It was, there's Gajar. Here's a Google Earth map. By the way, if you get to Google Earth and you want to move it around, just hold the shift key and then drag it, and you can, kind of get a 3D thing. I know I'm getting everybody motion sickness here. You're welcome. But here's Mount Hermon. There's Majel Shams. That's a Druze village that's in the Golan Heights area. It's in Israel now. And here's Metula. And I think if we zoom in here, we can see this is Gajar right here. It should show up here in a second as it renders. There you go. There's Gajar. And then this is Tel Dan that I told you about. So that's about 2 miles there to kind of give you an idea as to the distances. So from the Golan Heights, Majel Shams over to, you see here's Damascus, and then Majel Shams is here at the base of Mount Hermon. That's 35 miles maybe at the most. So these things are pretty close. And from Damascus to Beirut is 50 miles as the crow flies. If you put it into Google Maps and try to get this directions, they'll say you can't get there from there because there's a lot of contested borders and everything. So the other thing I want to talk about is the atrocities that have occurred. There are a lot of videos out there. I'll play some on Sunday. Caroline shared them. There is a tremendous propaganda war going on. For example, I saw a guy, he's a lunatic, lefty, self-loathing Jew. I don't know how else to describe him, named Max Blumenthal. And he posted something the other day saying that all of the deaths that happened down along the Gaza border were the result of Israel's own Hellfire missiles and tank attacks. And this is just lunacy, but people believe this. There's a real spiritual component to what's going on here. And frankly, I'm shocked. I mean, I guess I could give you a list of names of people that I don't. I could give you a list of people who I think are just complete raving lunatics, but I don't like to talk about Rick Wiles. But I've been very, very disappointed in the way that a lot of people have analyzed this. I do like her on a lot of things. I don't understand why she was so enamored with Kanye West. Candace Owens has been particularly disappointing on this whole issue. You can follow her, you can read her. I'm not telling you not to watch her or anything like that. I'm just saying is her inability to deal with the absolute evil that we saw Hamas do is and just sort of make it equivalent when Israel responds that it's morally equivalent is just, it's not good thinking. It's not logical. And I understand there's probably 8,500 dead people in Gaza, and a significant portion of them are women and children. Hamas uses them as human shields. Israel has to do something. This is the way wars go. I'm not saying Israel's perfect, but I'm telling you what we're seeing is just awful. The atrocities that Hamas did were egregious. I will play you a video. I mean, this one guy goes, the first responders are now being interviewed and giving interviews. You can find them. There's websites. I'll try to link to one of them that sort of has a pretty good map of all the attacks. If I can find it, I'll put it in the show notes. If not, I'll share it on Sunday. And they're putting these videos out. There have been videos played for the international press, and these people are just shocked at what they've seen. First responders come in and testify. We went into I was watching one video just before I started this. And there's two first responders. They can hardly talk. They're so emotionally distraught. And this is like almost a month after they found this. They went into one house. There was a 6-year-old, 7-year-old. They were bound together. They had been tortured. They had all been shot. And they had evidence then that and this was a Shabbat when this happened. This was a Sabbath. The meal that had been prepared, the terrorists had sat there and ate while they were torturing these people. Other cases, they went in and they said, we didn't know which head belonged to which body. Avi Abelo is a social media guy. He's in the Israel IDF reserves. Good guy. Met him when I was in Israel, like Avi. He has a YouTube channel on Rumble. Not YouTube channel. He has a Rumble channel called Avi Abelo, AVIABELOW, Avi Abelo. And he loves Israel. He's committed to Israel and that type of thing. And he had on, and then Caroline also had her on, a lady named Abigail Gimpel, AVIGAIL, and then Gimpel, GIMPEL, sometimes spelled GEMPEL. Her brother-in-law, Jeremy, is a rabbi, and we had a special night at FBC. We rented a place and had him come over, and I get to spend a few hours with him. Great guy, very committed Israel, runs a thing called Land of Israel Network, where you can see podcast about, these guys are Zionists. They live down around Efrat. They have a thing called Land of Israel Network. Ari Abramowitz, Yishai Fleischer, Malka Fleischer, Yishai's wife, who I know, very committed to the nation of Israel. They really have sacrificed a lot in their life to go there. So I met, as I said, Jeremy and his wife, and his sister-in-law, though she she works in education with ADHD people, but she has felt this calling to help prepare bodies for burial. And she'd only done like one or two. She was on Caroline Glick the other night, and then Avi Abelo interviewed her, and it's incredibly emotional if you watch it. It's very, very difficult. And she talked about how in Jewish religion, they believe the body is very important and it needs to be buried as soon as possible. And it has to be done with respect and care. But she said they were getting these little bags of a body, and there were like flaking flesh that had been burned, and they had to gather them up. And then there was blood, and they try to keep it all together. It's just the stories are just incredibly gruesome. And there's one story that the one first responder, I think I have the video for that. My moderator, I think I gave you that video, and I'll try to play that on Sunday. They went in and they found that the father, they had a baby. The father had been shot and killed. The mother was raped, but while they were raping the mother, they put the baby in an oven and turned the oven on high, and then raped and tortured the mother and then killed her. And of course, they found the baby as well. And these atrocities are something that I think are maybe unheard of and unmatched. And so the question is, what is Israel supposed to do with this? And listen, my opinion is Israel gets to decide. They're the ones who suffered it. They get to decide what to do. They know the rules. They'll follow the rules much more so than these animalistic, demonic maniacs and Hamas. And I'm sorry if you think that that's not very kind or loving, but listen, and I know Jesus will exact vengeance and wrath and all that stuff when he returns, but we also have a responsibility in this world that we live in. And so it's a difficult thing. You decide what you want to do. But I am telling you right now that I think that this Israel thing going forward is going to be the most divisive thing in the church. And I'm already seeing it. And I've already deleted and blocked a lot of people on our YouTube channel this week that just can't seem to understand that maybe this Israel thing figures into God's plan for the end times. You're entitled not to believe that. Okay. But you're also, you're entitled not to believe a large chunk of the word of God that talks about this, that makes it very clear. Doesn't mean you have to support Israel. And I said this in an update, I think it was last week, that there's this balance. You can turn Israel, physical, geographic Israel, into an idol. And that's not right. But you also should not use clever theology to mask your vile anti-Semitism and Jew hatred. That's really, really bad. And so there's a balance there, but I'm seeing way too much of it over on the Jew hatred thing on the right, and I don't like it. And, you're not going to get on our YouTube channel and spout your nonsense. That's just my opinion. You're free to get your own YouTube channel and do it there, but I don't want you doing it in the comments on our channel. And our moderators have instructions to limit those kind of comments. So the comments are shocking, especially in the context of what happened. It's just very difficult. So if you tons of questions. So I'll check my messenger here. It's hard to do this. If we get attacked like October 7th, can we defend ourselves? Is it okay with God? I believe that people have a responsibility to defend their family. I've told the story before. After 9/11, I was traveling hundreds of thousands of miles by air in that period of time. I was on planes all the time. Now, fortunately, I was able to upgrade to first class most of the time because I flew so much. But I thought about what am I going to do if somebody tries to take over this plane, like happened on 9/11? And my conclusion was I had a discussion in a group on Facebook, and I said I would probably try to take the guy out. And people, oh, that's so unchristlike, that's so unloving. You're preventing that person from accepting Jesus as his savior because he may not hear the gospel. But the fact of the matter is, there are 150 other people on the plane, and I really am fairly confident that I would stand at the bema seat of Christ. If I had done that, I don't think I'm going to lose rewards over that. That's just my opinion. When the disciples talked about Jesus, it says, do you have a sword? And they said, we have two. And he said, that's enough. And then everybody always points to the fact that when Peter took out a sword in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus said, no, 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 don't put it away. Well, that wasn't a blanket thing to put it away for all time. That was a blanket thing to not use it on that occasion because there was a much bigger thing going on there. So I think you have a responsibility to defend your family. Could the Mahdi be the rider on the white horse? I don't know. Look, there's a lot of controversy on this. I think my friend Joe Schimmel just put up a video. I've heard, I've not seen it, Blessed Hope Chapel, where he talked about an Islamic Antichrist. That's sort of the way I lean, but again, I kind of create baskets. Actually, I have this creepy picture that I'm going to show you. There's this theory out there that King Charles is the Antichrist. And again, I have a King Charles basket. And let me get this picture. I'll try to open it in my browser here. This is King Charles. This is a let's see if this opens up. No, it's not doing it. Now, let me see. It's a picture of King Charles. They had a cake contest in the UK, and somebody made a cake of King Charles' head with a crown on it with edible jewels. And it's very creepy. I'll have a picture of it on Sunday that you can look at. But it's it's probably not. You won't want to eat after you see it. It's very creepy. So there's people that think he's the Antichrist. Look, I'll note there's some things like the colors of the horses seem to correspond to the colors in the Islamic flags. And we can't dismiss that this thing with Islam is a major component of the end times. I mean, Erdogan, who's supposedly being friendly to everybody, he came out and he said that the crescent, the cross will soon fall to the Islamic crescent. That's what he said in a speech last week. It was posted, a Twitter post of the video was done by Erdogan's daughter that he spoke. He spoke to like 1.5 million people. So I think you can't dismiss that. The colors and everything are very significant. And again, I think it's one of these things where we need to see how this plays out. I know there's a lot of people that think the Antichrist comes from Europe. I know some think that the Antichrist is Jewish. Some think Islamic. And I'm just saying I'm kind of open to it working out anyway. And it's a little horn. So somebody asks, is this Daniel 7? I'm not sure. I think that we're seeing Daniel 7, things that are happening in Daniel 7 being set up to happen. And I'll talk more about that in the future. Here's a question. Is Gaza and the West Bank part of Israel? Was it part of Israel at one time? It's interesting that even if you look at a map, I did put up a map Sunday in my update of probably the furthest extent of the kingdom of David and Solomon back in the period between 1000 BC and 920 BC. they did not control Gaza. They did not control some of the coastal plains. Now, part of that is Israel did not do what the Lord told them to do. They were told to go in and completely destroy certain tribes. We know what happened at Ai. They had some problems there because they didn't obey what the Lord said. But Gaza was always kind of Philistia. It was always kind of separate part and not really part of Israel at any time. I think I said Sunday, everybody talks about, well, we have to return to the 1967 lines because, that will protect the Palestinians. Some people, thinking people, calls those the Auschwitz lines. It would be a disaster to go to those lines. My contention on Sunday was maybe we should go to the 967 BC lines. I would be on board with that. The question is, what's going to happen with Gaza? Amir Avivi at the IDSF wrote an article called "The Day After Hamas," and in one of his briefings last week, he said, "Listen, I don't think we've really thinking through what are we going to do with this thing. I mean, this is going to be an incredibly difficult decision." So here's a question: is Bibi's position at risk? My belief is that Bibi Netanyahu will not survive this politically, even if they win the war. My friend Tim says, explain the nature of Islam and its impact infiltration in regards to the brazen anti-Semitism we have witnessed this past month in America. Well, Tim, I don't know that all of that anti-Semitism is the result of Islam. That's just sort of the natural anti-Semitism. There was a guy I heard today, his name is Harzoni. He's an Israeli security guy. His son, I think, goes to Notre Dame and wrote an article and said, listen, America, we don't want your soldiers. We're going to fight this war on our own. And if I put up my hand like this, I have a new camera, and thanks for people who helped me do that. But if I put up my hand, it has AI and hands gestures. So I don't know the gestures yet. So if I put up my hand, it starts blinking at me like it's going to do something. So that the point of Mr. Harzoni, and I don't remember where I saw him interviewed. It might have been Steve Bannon on War Room today. Very good interview. Go to warroom.org, go to Rumble, their Rumble channel, and listen to it. They usually break out certain interviews, about 25 minutes. And it was very good. And he just says, we don't want your soldiers. Israel exists so Jews can defend themselves. I mean, we want your assistance, and we need some help with weapons and that sort of thing. But we don't want your soldiers on the ground here. That's not what we want. And I think that most people in Israel feel that way. There is, I think, a lot of unity in Israel right now about we've got to deal with this. This has been a very divided society over the past year, but I think there's a very good sense of unity there now. Everybody is telling me that we've got to get the job done. And we also have to figure out how was this able to happen? This is a big, big problem. And so I see a comment here, and I haven't heard Bibi explain why it took so long to get help to those people. I think, and I understand that comment, and I've talked to many people in Israel about that. You have to give the enemy some credit. This was a masterfully planned operation. It was somewhat unsophisticated technology mixed with some sophisticated technology used in a highly sophisticated way. They killed 300 or 400 soldiers in the initial incursions. And it may have been, I don't know. I haven't been able to get information. How many people were on the bases? There were 8 or 9 bases down there around Gaza. I've seen some of those, and I'm going to guess that there might have been 50 people there, but a lot of them were killed. And then they had to bring in assets from other places. And there could have been, it kind of reminded me of the story of Gideon and the Midianites in the Bible, where Gideon had a force. The Lord kept telling him to cut down the force. No, thousands are too many. And they eventually got down to 300 to fight this giant force. And they went in, they broke the pots, the lights came out, and it led to a lot of confusion. And it was, I'm just not so sure that I can dismiss sort of the potential spiritual blindness that might have been in operation at this time. Now, people in Israel say, no, people decided to do this intentionally. And I don't think we're there yet. It took a while, but you need to understand that once everybody kind of got a handle on what was happening, you had 4,500 people scattered over a fairly large geographic region, going house to house and door to door. And so you have to marshal your resources also. And I don't know what the Israeli defense order of battle is, but while this was going on, there was the most intense rocket barrage that Israel has ever seen. So I don't know if in that rocket barrage, and I'm not trying to make excuses for anything, I'm just saying is the practical thing to what happened is that, are the soldiers going to be running around when these rockets are flying off and everything's under a rocket and take shelter warning? I don't know what the Israeli Defense Force response is in those situations. So I think that the Netanyahu has said we all will have to hold to account. We'll all have to explain ourselves, and there'll be a time for that after the war. Now, a lot of skeptics in Israel as to whether that will ever occur, but there are things that happen there that just don't make any sense to me. Like a soldier on his way home the other night on leave was attacked by people with rocks, and these aren't stones. These are rocks. The rocks when they stone people to death. These are the rocks, and he shot and killed somebody, and he was under detention for days while they investigated this, and it seemed to be a clear case of self-defense. So I don't. There's the problems that we have in America with a woke military. I think there's some problems with that in Israel too, and this is a problem. So I don't think we really understand the nature of radical Islam, and I'm concerned about these millions of people that have been pouring over the borders of the United States unchecked ever since Biden came into office. It's outrageous. I saw Mayorkas testifying. It was being questioned by Senator Cotton. I don't know how the Republicans have the ability not to go over there and just slap him when he lies in response to the way he does. It's one of the most egregious things I've ever seen. Now, everybody says, well, the Republicans, they're going to do. Listen, Republicans, they don't control the Justice Department or anything. So nothing's going to happen until after the 2024 election. And I don't know that the Republicans are going to win in 2024. We're going to get an indication next week. There's an issue on the Ohio ballot called Issue 1, which is essentially will lead to unrestricted abortion in Ohio, even though the legislature's tried to put it down. They're putting it through. I suspect, my fear is I've already voted. I voted against it. Vote no on Issue 1 if you're in Ohio. I think it's going to pass, and I think it will be a bellwether to how the election's going to go in the fall. When will the time be when Israel loses 2/3 of their people? I believe that that's in this last period that we call the 70th week. Is Ezekiel 38 war before or after the rapture? Hazel, yes, it is before or after the rapture. I just don't know when yet. I used to think it was early in the 70th week. I think now it's later, part of the Armageddon campaign and that type of thing. So anyway, I'll take a quick look here. Other questions. look, I really appreciate you putting up with me, and your patience with me as I try to get this technology to operate all by my lonesome self here. I do appreciate you. If you would please like and share the video. Um, that helps the algorithms and that type of thing. Don't forget that we do post stuff at Real FBC. We do have a guest speaker this Sunday, Frank Figueroa with Carl Kirby's group. And I can't remember, I did a conference with Carl in Canada this spring. Great guy. And Frank used to be a pastor in Hawaii. He now lives in Minnesota. I don't know how you go from Hawaii to Minnesota. No, he lives in Indiana. He lives in Winona Lake, Indiana. And I'm not sure how you make that transition, but Frank can explain that. But he'll be preaching on Sunday. He'll also be doing our Power to Stand Bible study. I'll do my prophecy update on Sunday. I have a couple interviews next week, Minute to Midnight. I'm doing a radio program up in Alaska Monday evening. I'll try to stream that or post it later. I've got some other interviews coming up. I'll be doing both services on the 19th. I will also be doing the Sunday evening service at 412 Church in San Jacinto on November the 19th. That'll be live at, I think it's 7 p.m. Eastern. Pastor Tom Hughes asked me to cover for him on that. I know I'm not going, I would like to go to California, but I'm not going to California. We'll be doing that remotely from here or from church. So that'll be Sunday the 19th. So I'll do sermon, prophecy update, evening service on the 19th, and some other things. So listen, I think I just saw this comment. If somebody asked about strong delusion, I think this is the appropriate way to look at how these things are going to unfold in the end times. We have these prophecies as to what is going to happen. The ability for those things to happen, though, will not magically appear overnight. So, for example, I think I heard Scott Townsend last night on Tom Hughes' Wednesday night live stream, and he talked about it. Patrick Woods talked about it. I've talked about it. Scott's a great guy. We did a conference, and he was at the San Marcos, California conference in July. And he's made the point, I made the point, and I think it's very valid to reiterate it over and over again. When this Mark of the Beast thing happens, there's a technological side to that. That's the only way that it can happen. And we've been discussing this in Bible prophecy circles for ever since late Great Planet Earth, if not before. And we thought it was various things, but I think that the entire package to allow that to happen, when it's time for the false prophet to put it in place to help the Antichrist, it'll be just flipping the switch. All of the basic work will be done. It's not like the abomination of desolation that Jesus spoke about and Daniel spoke about takes place. And then the Antichrist and the false prophet have a meeting and say, hey, let's do a crowdfunding thing and see if we can raise money to do this highly complex Mark of the Beast system. It's going to be ready to go when it happens. And I think that's the way that a lot of these prophecies are. Folks, it's not out of the realm of possibility that we could be on the verge, and whether this is prophetic or not, we could be on the verge of thermonuclear war in the next months. That's not beyond the realm of possibility, the way this thing is unfolding in front of us. So you need to prepare your hearts. If you're not saved, you need to get saved. You need to accept the gospel of Jesus Christ. And you need to prepare yourself spiritually, mentally, be ready to protect your family. You have to decide the best way for you to do that. And I haven't even talked about, and unfortunately, when these things happen, it's easy to get distracted. I haven't talked about the developments in AI. I haven't talked about the developments in the COP28 stuff. I haven't talked about the things that were discussed at the FII Institute in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia last week. I will have some clips from an interview with Jared Kushner from that conference. He's still pushing the Abraham Accords. I don't think the Abraham Accords are completely dead. Although Bahrain did recall their ambassador and sent the Israeli ambassador home. That's, we're in war, and this is what happens in war. But it depends how Iran and Hezbollah and the Iranian proxies react. And we haven't even talked about, there's another thing we haven't talked about is what's going on up in Azerbaijan and Armenia. I don't think that's I think that's a very significant development up there as they're ethnically cleansing Armenians out of an area as Turkey continues its rise to power. Even though Turkey has all these economic problems, it's almost like there's a supernatural thing going on there behind Erdogan's rise and arrogance. It's pretty amazing to watch. So listen, I appreciate it. Like, share, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also subscribe to our Rumble channel, Real FBC. And I will talk to you Sunday. I so appreciate you taking the time to listen tonight. God bless.